Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Rulebook RX. I'm Dee, and today we're going to be looking at one of the hottest games on Board Game Geek right now, Earth. So, Earth is a 1 to, I believe, 5 player game by Inside Up Games. We're going to be taking a look at the rulebook. How does that help teach the game? This game is supposed to be kind of an easier teach, almost on the same wavelength as Wingspan. So I wanted to take a look at this game, see how hard it was for me to learn, how hard it was to teach, and we're going to be taking a look at all of the UI UX components that go into explaining the game itself in just a moment here. So I was excited to give this one a shot. I love the way things are kind of set up with the game from what I learned about it before I got the game. But we're going to be taking a look in a deep dive of Earth by Inside Up Games. All right, well, here we have everything kind of set up. You know, various things that come with the game. I'm going to be going into the UI UX of what's included with the game in just a little bit, but first I want to talk about the rulebook. The rulebook does a really good job of doing a couple things, and I want to show you those right away. So right at the front here, we see that there's a couple different of these boxes that are different colors. I really like it when they do that, but they go a little step further. In this grayish box, these are things that you shouldn't miss. In this beige box, these are things that help the teach make it easier. That is fantastic. Right down here, we've got a QR code to watch a video to learn it instead of the rule book. I think that's great. I think it's really nice to have that option. But I want to take a look at the rule book and see how good of a job that does explaining. So let's take a look on the inside here, but I just wanted to point out these two things were really nice. And I wish more board games would do that. So looking in here, you'll notice that the rulebook itself is quite large. I have a large hand, and it's a big rulebook. So just know that going in, I don't think that's a problem, because as you notice when we flip it on the inside, tons of visual representation. Here we have those beige boxes that they were talking about to help with the teach, which is always welcome. Here they show a really nice breakdown of the setup area, along with what you're going to need. On the side of each board will be a grid of 16 cards. Here they do a nice job. I'll bring it up here. They do a really nice job of showing ways to make the game setup quite easier. You can have a beginner, standard, and advanced lesson. I think that that's really nice. Moving on, here's a really good explanation of each of the different cards. Now, I'm going to say this. There are tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of different types of cards, which, when you open the box, might be kind of overwhelming. But really, there's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different kinds of cards. 2 of the cards, namely your island, which will look like this, and then the climate, which will look like this, mainly are there for starter and then other options later on. And I'll get into that in just a bit. But looking over here at the turn action and overview, we start seeing a really good pattern of what they're going to start doing next. And this carries on with the rest of the game. So here we have the 4 different actions that you're going to be able to take per round. And right above there, they show that cute little player marker that we have right here to indicate which action you're going to be taking. So one thing I want to point out with the rulebook that's really nice is here we have this green color, and I don't know if you can pick this up from the video, but this border around here, same color here, same color with this border, same color with this border, same color with this border. I absolutely love that. Also down here in the activating abilities, they'll have those same colors laid out as well. We're going to keep going with that. When we flip it over here, these are the different explanations of, the deep dive of what is in each of these different abilities. So you'll notice, once again, that color coordination to let you know exactly what they're talking about. We've got the green, we've got the red, we've got the blue, and finally, we've got the yellow. So I absolutely love that when a company can do that. Within these as well, you still have these important rules to not miss, and then helpful hints to make the game easier to teach. Finally, and I'll get into a little bit of this with the UI UX of the board itself, you have this explanation of, it's red, yellow, and blue. Those actions will pop off on your turn when that symbol shows up, so I'll show you that as well. Here they kind of go into a little bit of the different cards that are going to be more of end game and your goals for the game, and that would be on this board setup here. Some of the tokens on here will not be at the beginning of the game. This was just from a solo game that I was playing, and I'm going to show you a couple other things from that play as well. But here you have some fauna cards, and here you have some climate cards. The nice thing that they do is on the other side of this board, which I'll clear this off, this is the advanced board, which has 4 fauna and 2 terrain. To make it easier, you can just have 4 fauna. We learned the game this way, without the terrain, and I think that went really well. As a way to just kind of have a beginner game, it really just kind of lets you focus on how the game actually plays. So I'm going to throw that over here. Once again, the other side of the board, really easy to distinguish. Okay, well here's, the more advanced side and the beginner side, so you can really pick that up. They also do a really good job of, beginner ones have this little flower token right here, which is really smart, just to help with that UI UX of the game. Back to the rulebook. I don't mind when companies do this. If they're missing space, just throwing a nice image there, instead of just having white space, that feels right. There's enough white space around here that nothing feels cluttered. The way they have the rules set out here in these nice little columns, that's great. As someone who loves UI UX, if it's too long, that gets to be too hard to read. Broken down in these little columns, especially in a big rule book like this, very helpful. Also, within these sections, they have some nice iconography that goes on with the board itself. I'm going to quick go over here. So all of this iconography is found here and on the player board as well, and I'm going to show that in just a moment. But yeah, I just wanted to point out that in these different colors, they show the iconography really nice, so that's easy to see really quick when you're looking to help explain a rule. I'm going to go on to the next page here, but you can see everything. There's a lot of visual representation to help it make it easier for you to understand all the different things going on here. Here we have more explanation of these different cards, the island cards, the climate cards that I kind of showed earlier. Those are more of, a beginning set of like, here's how your island's going to start out, and then pretty soon everything just kind of gets into a rhythm. Here we go as well with more iconography. Both of those sets are really easy to kind of grasp once you get going with the game. I can tell you at first everything seems kind of overwhelming, but as soon as you start, it's just like, well, this is quite easy. This is something that I loved and I used quite a bit. This is an example of a turn. So I wish more games would do this. It really goes very, very thoroughly in how each turn would go. During this example of a turn, one thing that I really love is you have all of these different numbers here to say, okay, well, first what this guy's going to do, or this person is going to do, is take this yellow action, which is going to let him draw some cards when you follow number 2, and then grow from the supply. So you're going to go over here, you're going to grab one of these, put it on your stack. I'm going to go into the bamboo stacks or the growth stacks in just a little bit. But this is a really nice way to just see everything in action before you start the game. So yeah, I mean, everything is kind of clarified here. We've got the end game, more of the example turn, and then the example scoring, which is always very, very helpful, especially when you can see it laid out like this. That's awesome. I'm going to go on to these last 2 pages here. So I love when everything on the end game is on one page. So you get here, and then you can just easily see everything that's going to be included in this play and how to score things. And then finally, we've got the solo game layout right here. This was extremely helpful. It's got its own board, which I'll reference in just a moment. But yeah, once again, everything is laid out really nice with the different colors laid out right here. And then it's broken down from your turn and Gaia's turn. That's super helpful. The game doesn't change too drastically, a regular playthrough versus an AI. So that's really nice. And it's kind of, you're not really playing for a score, you're playing to beat Gaia, which is, it can be kind of difficult. Finally on the back here, more index, which is nice because you can easily see where to find some of those different major actions that you're looking for right on the back here. Typically, I know all of us like seeing all of the different icons and all the different jazz on the back, but I'm going to show you where that's on the boards itself. Finally, there's a team mode. I have not played the team mode, but It's there for if you want it. Once again, they have some more QR codes here. If you want to get more involved with the game, I think that's fantastic. Make it as easy as possible for people to access your game. If they want to find out a rule, it goes to Board Game Geek. You know, it's a really nice, really well laid out rule book. I think they did a fantastic job with this one. So the graphic design for M81 Studio and Julio Sosnick, I hope I'm saying that right, they knocked it out of the park with this, with everything in the rulebook here. You know, from the color coordination to just how they've laid everything out. Spectacular job. All right, so now I'm going to be taking a look here at the UI UX of the game while you're actually playing. One thing I want to point out here, here's that player marker, which is really nicely matched up with all the sizes here. So that makes it really easy for when you're going back and forth and you're picking your actions that you're going to want to do. Brief overview here. On your turn, you're going to pick one of these 4 actions up at the top. That's going to correspond to different actions that you're going to do. Your opponent then gets to do the bottom actions. So you're always doing something on someone's turn. They make that really easy because all of the actions are the same on everyone else's board. So it's not super hard to explain because you can just look on your board, they can look on their board and see what's going on. Next up, I want to show you, here at the bottom of every player board is what I was kind of referencing with the resources icons right there. And then any kind of end game scoring is right here. So if there's any question of, hey, what do I do at the end of the game? All that's here, and then all of the different iconography is right there. I think that's really smart to have just at the bottom of every player board here, so you don't need a separate card to reference what am I doing with this game. Here you have really nice spot for those, for these fun little leaf tokens that you're going to use to score on fauna and terrain. So yeah, I think the player boards themselves really help explain the game. On the backs behind here, this shows where these different cards will go. You got your island card, you got your climate card, and you've got your terrain card. So everyone's got a terrain card to go with, and then if you play the advanced game, well, actually, if you play the beginner game, you're not going to have this one at all, but if you play the advanced game, you'll have some different scoring mechanisms to aim for at the end of the game. Game comes with these nice little soil tokens, which you can store down here. I do wish there was a little bit of differential between maybe a different color, just to make it easier to see while you're grabbing them out of a stack, but no big deal. You can always sort them out by 1s, 5s, and 10s if you really want to. But yeah, I think the player boards really help explain the game super well. So one thing I want to draw your attention to is this grow action. You're going to see that right here. This one needs 1 growth to go, and it'll give you 3 victory points. So during the game, what you'd be doing is, they say if there's only a 1 on there and you have a growth, you can just put a cap like that. I still typically will stick 1 on there and then stick the top on there, just because it does show that there is the growth there and it's capped off. This can be kind of a tricky thing. Now, most of these are going to be fine. This one's like a 2, and that stacks quite easy, but when you get to like something like this giant sequoia, you have to try and stack 8 on there. Right there, 8. But it gives you 13 points. I got this one during our first play, and some of these are cut really nice for the most part, but getting them to stack kind of becomes almost like a dexterity game. As you notice, boom, they fall over. So what I would recommend is if you have big fumbly hands like I do, you can always do something like this, where you go 4 and 4 and cap one of them off. If you have any kind of dexterity issues, if your hands aren't great, there are ways you can modify it, but when I first saw that 8 one, I was like, holy cow, that's huge. So here we've got things set up for the solo game, which I want to quick show you how that works, you know, and how it compares to the regular game. Once again, we've got the same top row of actions, but it's going to be a little different right here. So you're going to be doing a very similar action to how you do in the regular game, but this is what happens to Gaia. That's who they refer to as the AI of the game. So you're playing against Mother Earth, which is kind of cool. They do have an option. This is a more easy game. They do have an advanced, harder game, which is down here. I think that's nice that they have both options available on the same board itself. So it makes it really easy to start up a game and decide which one you want to do. You just take this little player marker, and you can either put it up or below, whichever game you're playing, okay? So I think that that's really nice. This part right here got a little bit janked around, but this is where you're going to store some of those sprout tokens. During the game, you're going to be putting these sprout tokens on the board itself. I think that that's really kind of cute, and it lets you kind of turn those into more soil here. So you're going to be taking these leaves and stuff, and it does exactly what it does in nature, and I think that that's really neat. But here's the place that I've kind of found to be a little problematic in the solo game. So once again, we have a whole bunch of these grow tokens. When you get those grow tokens, you got to stack them up here. And once this starts getting filled up with, this one takes 5. Once they start getting stacked up, you throw the little thing on top, and then it almost gets to be a dexterity game when you're putting out new tiles. Now you'll notice that this one got a little wonky. So that's one thing. What I ended up doing was, when I would kind of stack these up, but instead of having to like work around those, once it's capped, I know they're not going back, so we just stick the little caps on there. That's my workaround that I found for my big dumb hands. But that could be an issue for some people that have more dexterity issues. Just want to put that out there, but there are ways to mitigate that. So all in all, I think the UI UX on this is really nice. All the iconography, once you kind of get into the rhythm of the game, you don't need to be referencing the rulebook quite so much, because everything is either on, you know, for the solo game, everything is right here or right here. And then with a regular game, I'll show you this. This is that solo rulebook. On the other side is just a player board. So they did a really nice thing with not having too many other extras that you need to do for the solo game. You get the board game, or you get the board out, and you just start going. So that's everything that's in the game. Let's go back, and I'm going to tell you more what I think. So what do I think? Obviously, you can tell I'm a really big fan of all the UI UX that went in the game. There's some really interesting things with the mechanics of the game that almost make it like you're explaining how Earth works, which I think is really neat, when a board game can kind of grab things from reality and kind of let that be the mechanism involved. What I'm talking about here is when, you know, you're growing some of these different sprouts, these little lovely little green tokens that you put on the little leaf tokens here on the cards, you can take those and turn those into soil tokens, which makes sense because that's what leaves do in nature. There's other ways you can kind of like mulch to gain points. You're making your soil richer. I find all that very fascinating. Instead of being a game that focuses around animals, which most of the nature kind of based games do, this one focuses on the habitats that grow those creatures. So when you're looking at some of these different fauna cards, they're going to have different options, and these are both double-sided, so they're going to give you different victory points at the end of the game, or different conditions that you're looking for to try and gain points throughout the game. But I really like that instead of being strictly about animals like most games are, this is based on the plants and the earth of Earth, which is really neat. My wife is a huge gardener, and just turning the rest of what is in my board game section into lots of plants. So when I set this down with her, there was a little bit of, at first it's like, okay, she was a little overwhelmed by the amount of cards that are in the game, but once we started going, it was like, okay, well, this does this, and really you're just kind of paying attention to your board, which sounds solitaire-ish, but there's still that race for the fauna cards and the terrain cards. So the teach itself was quite easy once you get past the, oh my gosh, there's several giant stacks of cards. Once you get past that, it gets quite easy. Yeah, I wouldn't say this would be a perfect family game for, you know, grandma or grandpa to play. It might be a little much, but it's not far off from that. So being able to teach this one really easy, I'm hoping to teach my mother-in-law this weekend, just to kind of see how she would like it, and then maybe I can eat my words and say, well, this is perfect for grandma, because they might know more about the earth than we do, and that's kind of a cool thing. So I'm going to give this game a healthy sign of approval for everything involved with Earth. They did a really fantastic job with that rulebook, laying out everything with those color-coordinated things, the little hints in the different colors of this is going to make it easier, don't miss this rule. I love that, where it's just like, it really takes a lot of the guesswork, and the anxiety of looking through a rule book when you're trying to play the game of like, oh, I don't know what this rule does. And then you kind of look like an idiot, which happens to me all the time. But I love it when they put those steps already in the board itself or in the rule book to help someone like me teach the game. So yeah, I think they did a really great job of laying everything out with the graphic design from rule book to game. Gets nothing but a thumbs up from me. So Earth gets all the accolades that it's getting from Board Game Geek for me as well. I love it. People say, oh, it's the Wingspan or Arc Nova killer. It might be the Arc Nova killer for me. I don't know if this is going to take out Wingspan for me. You can hear our animals barking right now. I don't know if this is going to take out Wingspan for me just because that's kind of the game my wife and I like to play, 2-player. And but this does scratch a lot of that same itch. Arc Nova was a bit too long where this puts it in a tight hour and a half. The solo mode itself was maybe 30 minutes. So for a solo game, it hits the spot of being easy to get to the table, plays quick. The automa isn't just points. It's you're actually playing against someone that's taking things, and you have to make decisions based on, you know, what cards you're going to give them as points. Really neat stuff. So once again, I'm Didi. This is the Rulebook RX. If you like this kind of thing, talking about rule books, graphic design, layout design, UI UX of board games, come on back. We're going to be taking a look at way more games. If you have any suggestions for me, put them down in the comments below. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. I'd like that. And if you want to subscribe, hey, that's great. Let's take this journey together. I'm still kind of getting my feet under things, but I really enjoy looking at the design and graphic design principles within board games itself. So that's it. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. Enjoy your time on Earth, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.